So greetings, fellow Singularitarians. Welcome back to our readings of Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near, where we really want to go through the whole book. I don't know whether that is possible, but I hope we can achieve that. Now, you may wonder, why don't I just read a summary of the book? Why don't I just look up one of these pages where they summarize the book and I just get into that? Now, this is not mistaken in general. But I feel what people usually misunderstand is that we really learn through discussion and the social involvement, the social classification of theses that surround us, where we get like counter arguments, arguments for, where we really discuss the author. And so I see a lot of YouTube channels that say, yeah, you should read 50 books a year and like at least one book a day or something, which is crazy, right? And I can say, the moment where I read a book completely, like Bill Gates, for example, is quite rare. And I do think that you can still gain a lot of information, especially when you focus on the central passages of a text and then you try to discuss them. Another way is, of course, to read a complete book and try to look into every little corner of the content. But this requires a very particular book. And I'm not yet sure whether Ray Kurzweil's book is a candidate for that. I can say that for German philosophy, usually where every sentence is so dense that it contains so much information. And forgive me when I say that American literature is very often written for entertainment and includes a lot of examples, a lot of filler sentences that should make the content more interesting. And then indeed, sometimes it's not necessary to read so much and then maybe just get a summary and discuss the summary. I don't know that for the book of Ray Kurzweil yet. It seems so far every sentence has delivered valuable information, a lot of meat, just little potatoes, we could say. And let's look at first immediately at the table of content. This is just to see where we are. We are on page 24 still. We get like the transition to page 25. And then we will read what are the 6 epochs. I mean, Ray Kurzweil reconstructs a historical line of development that, according to his theory, is exponential. And he thinks that we can extend this trend into the future. I'm not entirely opposed extending this trend into the future. It's a thought experiment, which Ray Kurzweil does in a very interesting manner. But the question is, how much evidence do we have that this will really happen this way in the future? And I think that's a bit difficult. I want to just correct myself a little bit about the 6 epochs that I have mentioned before. We see here the 6 epochs of what Ray Kurzweil grasps as the fundamental development of our universe. Big Bang, surprise, physics and chemistry came at first. Then second epoch, biology and DNA was developing. That's what I just described as life. Then epoch 3 is when minds develop themselves, brains come onto the scene. And then epoch 4, which he calls the age of technology. I was pretty much in line with that. I believe I just used different words. And then epoch 5, which we are possibly already entering to certain degrees, is the merger, the large merger of human technology with human intelligence. And this merger is quite necessary, according to Kurzweil, because here the important decision for the future is made. And that is the decision of whether we will be subordinate to machines or whether we will be the ruler of machines. I would say Ray Kurzweil has actually a third position where he says, no, it's neither either or. It is a kind of combination where humans rule themselves with the help of technology. Yeah, but why shouldn't it cause some power troubles? So the question is, are we close to artificial intelligence in general? And there's an interesting text by a researcher, and her name is Kate Crawford. The text claims that she works at USC, University of California, I guess, and for Microsoft. And I don't know so much about her. We have here a picture of her that she provided. There it says Kate Muscart. I guess somebody else took the picture. Not so important. And what does she say? So she talks about artificial intelligence that we have right now. And we wonder, how far are we in the process? Where are we in the process? Are we really already entering the stage where artificial intelligence is intelligent? And she says here that the name is deceptive. She says AI is neither artificial nor intelligent. Now, I don't know what she means by artificial, but her claim for intelligence is that AI just does very specified tasks and must be trained with regard to very particular material, and then can only be applied to such a material. So it cannot transfer its knowledge to other domains, which humans usually can. There are some more criticisms that she has. For example, we see that in this sentence here. AI is made from vast amounts of natural resources, fuel, and human labor, and it's not intelligent in any kind of human intelligence. It's not able to discern things without extensive human training, and it has completely different statistical logic for how meaning is made. So technically what she says is, first, AI is not efficient, just needs to be trained with vast material. And second, it is not able to discern. Probably it's able to discern with regard to the material, but it cannot transfer its knowledge to other domains. And then she says, third, that we shouldn't compare AI with human beings because it technically has, or it uses a different form of meaning. And she says that this was, since 1956, a terrible error, a sort of original sin in the field, to believe that minds are like computers and vice versa. So yeah, I believe we are still not yet very clear on what minds are. Philosophers are still discussing that, so how can we compare it to computers? But this also raises another major problem, because maybe if computer consciousness arises and it's different from human consciousness, and we don't know what human consciousness really is, we may not be able to recognize any other form of consciousness. So she says a little bit more on the trend of extracting information from big data. She's a little bit pessimistic about that. She says data isn't an inert substance. It's not something that is just itself. She says it's actually mediated. Here in particular, she says it always brings a context and a politics. She explains that with regard to some examples. Sentences from Reddit will be different from those in kids' books. Images from mugshots, databases have different histories than those from the Oscars, but they're all, I would say, look alike. Yeah. So here we have major problems, and then she also discusses like the question of emotion detection. I wonder whether she's a bit critical. It's possible that computers cannot really predict what are human emotions, but humans can't either. So she wants to say there's an existential dimension to emotions, which I agree. I agree upon that view, but possibly computers can infer better from human expressions what somebody's emotions are than humans can. And that would be an advantage. They may still not know what real emotions are, but they can do it better. And see, it's similar for chess. Computers haven't solved chess. They don't know whether the game is ultimately won for white or whether it ends in a draw. But they play better than humans, and that's the important marker. So we shouldn't overestimate AI, but I think we shouldn't also underestimate it. And I think it depends on the question we are asking in particular. So for that reason, let's develop more that kind of question, and let's jump back to the text of Kurzweil. Let's go to page 24, chapter 1. We have read that. He compared it with the singularity that impacts us, and that for singularitarians has this recognized impact, that he compares this kind of singularity with a black hole, simply because we don't know what is inside the singularity, but it has such a large gravitational pull on everything that surrounds us. And he wants to make some more arguments, namely that technology very soon will merge with human intelligence. And here he makes some suggestions that, of course, the brain is an incredible organ. Although impressive in many respects, however, the brain suffers from severe limitations. We use its massive parallelism, 100 trillion interneuronal connections operating simultaneously, to quickly recognize subtle patterns. But our thinking is extremely slow. The basic neural transactions are several million times slower than contemporary electronic circuits. That makes our psychological bandwidth for processing new information extremely limited compared to the exponential growth of the overall human knowledge base. Yeah, so knowledge gets bigger and bigger, it exponentially grows, but our brains are just too slow to keep up with that. And so we have 1.0 biological bodies, and probably we have to turn them into human bodies 2.0. So, of course, he also mentions that we have a myriad of failure modes, just to mention cancer, and so on and so forth. And we need cumbersome maintenance rituals every day. And I agree, I'm so annoyed. I always wonder, why do nails have to grow? Why do I have to go to get a haircut once in a while? Why is my room getting dirty? Okay, this is another question. Let's not discuss that right now. So yeah, these are questions he asks, and then he says, the singularity will allow us to transcend these limitations of our biological bodies and brains. We will gain power over our fates. Our mortality will be in our own hands. And yeah, this is it's an interesting question, right? Who wants to live forever? He doesn't want to say that we will be living forever, whatever that means. Whatever it means that our life is limited by sleep, unconsciousness, and death. But he says in the future we can decide whether we enter the realm of the big nothing. If the big nothing exists, I mean, have you ever seen nothing? Sometimes you ask people, what will happen after death? And then they say, oh, these religions, they're all crazy. They imagine a heaven or a paradise. So stupid. There will be nothing. Well, what's nothing? Have you ever seen nothing? Have you ever experienced nothing? Maybe something before our birth? Maybe that's the experience of nothing? I don't know. Yeah, he goes on. While human intelligence is sometimes capable of soaring in its creativity and expressiveness, much human thought is derivative, petty, and circumscribed. Okay, I jumped ahead already. So here we actually go on. We will fully understand human thinking and it will vastly extend and expand its reach. By the end of the century, the non-biological portion of our intelligence will be trillions of times more powerful than unaided human intelligence. And see, the question is, would you use a Neurolink like Elon Musk suggests? And a lot of people say, no, that's unethical. But looking back, there was a moral verdict on anyone who did plastic surgery. We looked down upon that. But now almost everybody does it. So morality often is associated with the things that happen quite often, and it often disregards phenomena that are quite rare. Now that we have more and more people who had plastic surgery, we are much more inclined to accept it as a morally neutral standard. And maybe that will be the same with enhancement. However, there comes a power aspect of that, because we have to ask, who is allowed? Who gets the money? Not necessarily who is allowed, but who will have the capabilities to do it first, and does it give them an unfair advantage in the human market competition that will just keep them ahead of all the normal workers who are not yet in the field of these noble people who have millions and millions of dollars. Not that I necessarily criticize that. In many regards, I think that markets are very good for our human interactions, that they are very efficient. But of course, there are moral questions that come with it and that we shouldn't neglect or ignore. So here, from a strictly mathematical perspective, the growth rates will still be finite, but so extreme that the changes they bring about will appear to rupture the fabric of human history. That at least will be the perspective of unenhanced biological humanity. So we can think history in a sense of a continuous rise, or we can of course also assume that at some point there will be a rupture, an event that is so disruptive that we cannot recognize that as part of our history anymore. And this is, according to him, just due to the unenhanced biological human perspective that we have. But the singularity will represent the culmination of the merger of our biological thinking and existence with our technology, resulting in a world that is still human but that transcends our biological roots. And here we see what I have said at the beginning. Yeah, he rather thinks of a third alternative, neither technology ruling humans nor humans ruling technology. It must become a certain kind of oneness. And what will be the unevocally human in such a world? Well, he says that all that our species is about is that we inherently seek to extend our physical and mental reach beyond current limitations. So our goal, as Ray Kurzweil phrases it, is to overcome ourselves. And maybe being human cannot be condensed to an essence that we pack into a nice formula and that we express in human rights. Maybe the essence of humans is this desire of absolute freedom, to free yourself from all limitations, and in that sense to overcome your physical limitations, but also your mental limitations. Nevertheless, the singularity has many faces. So right now it shows itself through different phenomena. Even though we overcome our body and our mental reach, I claim that this is still just a phenomenon and we think it from our perspective. We may be not able to clearly think the singularity yet. Okay, so good so far. The next time we will look more on the intuitive linear view versus the historical exponential view. He explains that actually here, so we see a linear trend of development and an exponential trend. It basically means that exponential trends have an extreme acceleration at some point that we have to take into account, and most of the time we think the future in a linear way. So his demand is to think the future in a different mode. So we shouldn't extend phenomena that we see nowadays and just think them in terms of increments. We have to think the future as a space of possibilities that we cannot simply predict. Or if we want to say something about it, we have to say it in another way. However, what that is, we will probably explore that in one of the next episodes. So if you want to know what it is, subscribe, hit the bell, be on board, and please answer the question for today. Would you get a Neurolink? Do you think it's immoral to enhance our bodies with technology? So thank you very much for today, and live long and prosper.